It's my absolute pleasure to welcome two pioneers of comedy who we're going to be lucky enough to spend an hour with. Please give a very warm welcome to Ruth Jones and Rob Brydon. Welcome. Welcome. Oh, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited. I think we can all agree that we're all looking forward more to the Gavin and Stacey Christmas special than actual Christmas lunch this year. It's fever pitch now, isn't it? The excitement for Gavin and Stacey Christmas special, which of course we will be talking about, and we'll be asking questions from the audience as well. But first of all, Rob and Ruth, I wanted to ask how you first met. And your history, right at the very beginning.
Well, it's a long time ago. In
1980 or something?
Or 81.
Yeah.
So, well, 79 I went to Porthcawl. So I lived in Swansea and we moved schools to Porthcawl. And I was thinking I wanted to do acting and performing. And I remember the headmaster saying, we've got a wonderful drama department here with a wonderful young drama teacher, Roger Burnell, who is here tonight.
Where is he?
Where are you, Rog?
Where?
Where is he? Where? Hey. And, I'm getting emotional.
Oh.
Bloody hell, carry on.
We had a fantastic drama department in school, and every year we would do a musical, and it was like the most amazing experience because we rehearsed it like all year.
Oh, it took over. It just took over your life.
And it was the high point of the year. It was always in February, wasn't it?
Right,
Sort of late February. And we did 3 shows. I think now they do about like a 2-week run or something. But in those days, you did 3 shows. And it was fantastic. And there were great big numbers, they were big productions, weren't they? And they included everybody throughout the year. So it didn't matter what year you were in. You'd have a little part, or you'd be backstage, you'd making props. And
we didn't have little parts, though, did we, Ruth? We were the...
No, Rob, we didn't. Well,
the
first show I did was Toad of Toad Hall, and I was a stoat.
Oh, I hadn't arrived yet.
No, you arrived.
I came to the school and it was West Side Story, and it was mostly cast. But I ended up playing Snowboy, one of the Jets, who had one line.
Which was,
It hurts. It was my line.
And that was my first memory of Rob, because I remember you being in that scene, and I just thought, he's a really good actor.
What, with that one bit?
Yes!
Bloody hell, I wonder what I did.
It was the scene at the gym, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was the first time, my first memory of you, anyway. And I was years younger than you, of course, wasn't I?
Oh, good God, she's about 15 years younger than me. I mean, it's a wonder we were in the same production. But then we did, so amongst my favourite that we did together was Guys and Dolls, where Ruth was Miss Adelaide, and this will surprise you, I was Skye Masterson, the romantic lead, which you wouldn't...
Why?
Well, I mean, you do. I don't get cast as that these days, but Roger had a limited talent pool to... Or maybe I was blossoming. I do think every person has a period, don't they? I think of Prince William. Do you remember when he was a teenager? For a while, he was melting a mouth nest, wasn't he? And then the gene pool kicked in, it was all over.
You were very handsome, and a very sexy Skye Masterson, I think. And had a very rich, mellifluous voice, beautiful singing voice. Oh. And we only had one scene together, though, didn't we, as Adelaide?
Yeah, we didn't do much together.
I was Adelaide.
So we did that, and we were also in Carousel together, and we loved it, and that's where we became really good friends. Right. And then you went off to Warwick University. I went to the Welsh College of Music and Drama, but we always stayed in touch. I always say Ruth is the closest thing I have to a sister.
Wow.
You know, I mean, I got a sister, but I hate her guts. So Oh, good God, if you met her. She's an absolute washout. But I always say Ruth is the closest thing I have to a sister.
That's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. So when, after you went to Warwick and you were at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama...
It wasn't Royal then, Huw.
Oh, was it not?
No.
Oh, okay. Just up the road.
Yeah.
When did you cross paths again? And were you in touch? Were you comparing notes about how hard it was to break into the industries that you wanted to work in?
Well, I mean, I was just so excited that Rob was like, because you had a radio show, didn't you, on Radio Wales?
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about how you'd got a part in something and you had one line, and I was really excited because you...
Yeah.
Rob Jones, because he was Rob Jones then, Rob Jones has got a part in something, he's getting paid £300.
Oh, that thing, yeah.
But we stayed in touch, and then I didn't have an equity card, do you remember?
Yeah.
And you were going to do this sketch show for BBC Wales, a non-broadcast pilot, and they needed a girl.
That's right.
And the producer is here tonight as well, David Peat. He's here somewhere, waving. Yes, there. And they were getting a team together with Steve Spears, Rob, and Wayne Forrester, and they needed a female member of the team. And you sort of very kindly suggested me, but I didn't have an equity card at the time.
No.
And I was going to give up acting because it was just not happening for me. And you said, oh, look, just keep going, just get your equity card and then you can be in this BBC show. And I luckily was offered a part in a pantomime in Porthcawl, playing a Ninja Turtle. I had to shift scenery, and it was for Stan Stennett, and I got my equity card that way, and then it kind of went from there, and we went on and did the sketch show, didn't we?
Wow.
So,
there's so many names that you've mentioned, people who nurtured talent, people who really believed in young people. That was obviously set you on your path.
It's very important. So Roger, very, very, very vitally important. Gave me the confidence and self-belief. He's a wonderful, wonderful drama teacher, and set me...
Oh, don't look, he's gone, he's gone. He's gone, he's gone.
Oh,
he's
there
gone.
were
very important.
Knockbacks as well along the line.
Huw, I've had knockbacks.
But I mean, we'd be here all evening maybe if we went through them all one by one. Oh. But of course, you know, you're Rob Brydon, so it's okay. It's a happy ending. But Ruth, improv comedy. Improv comedy.
I remember that, surely.
Improv was a big thing for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Rob and I stayed in touch a lot, and then after we did these sketch shows, I can't remember the dates, I'm terrible at dates, but basically you told me about an improvised comedy group that'd been set up in Bath.
Yeah, I joined it, hadn't I?
Yeah.
Already, and that's where I met Julia Davis.
Yes.
And then I said, and she was, wow, you know, I thought, gosh, she's good. And I said to you, you'd be good in this. You should come and do this.
Yeah, and we used to rehearse. We used to go twice a week, I think, to Bath, and then we would do a show on a Friday night.
That's right.
And we got paid 25 quid. I always remember that.
I don't remember that. Okay, yeah. I think I got 30.
And basically what we would do is Paul Z. Jackson, who was the guy who set this up, he taught us all these different skills.
He did. He taught us a lot of techniques and disciplines that I still use in my stand-up shows. The basic rules of improv, which is essentially yes and staying open all the time. So we started doing that and really enjoyed it.
No, we didn't.
We did, didn't you? We did, didn't we? Yeah.
Oh, keep up. Keep up. I was blocking you.
I see what you are. Okay. But what I do remember is when we would drive there, yes, this is the best bit. So we'd drive, I had a car, and we would drive from Cardiff to Bristol or Bath, and we would listen to Barbara Streisand and Barry Gibb's Guilty album. And we would sing Guilty and What Kind of Fool in the car, harmonies, and that was as much fun as doing the shows.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And we did Andrew Gold, that was the one I always remember.
Talk to my baby on the telephone, long distance. Never really knew I could miss someone so bad, yeah. I'm a little bit hurry, I'm a little bit hurry. I never really knew how my heart is. 'cause I love her. I'm hoping that I never recover. It's a harmony, that was.
Oh,
Well, we did used to, the impro shows, there'd be like a team of 4 people, and you would sort of ask the audience to make suggestions. So they might write down bits of paper, a name of a place, or a name of a character, and then we would pick these things out of a hat, and we would have to create a scene there and then. And sometimes we did ones with musicals. We had a very good musical guy, didn't we, who could just play any style of music. So we'd say to the audience, can I have a household object, please? And they'd go, a toilet brush. And you'd say, can I have a style of music, please? And they go, folk music. And so then we would have to invent a song about a toilet brush in the style of folk. And the thing is, they were sort of games in a way. But like Rob said, I think, and I know there's a lot of writers out here today, that I think it's a really good way of being creative, especially if you have some performance in you, you feel comfortable with interacting with other actors. Don't you think? Because you've used it a lot, haven't you, with your
When we did
writing?
Human Remains, we that's how we sort of wrote it. We'd sit with each other on a sofa like this and just start talking in character for ages and transcribe it and go through it and see what was good and what wasn't. And the story would sort of suggest itself through the improvisation. I think, just as much as us saying, well, what if this happened or that happened, the characters would have said that, So that, yes, I found improvisation. I mean, I still love it now.
There's a lot of Uncle Bryn improvisation.
No, nothing. It's all everything is there written. I think the only thing wasn't that thing about, James told me, or you told me, that sepia was my idea. He said I told him that when we were both on Manly Beach in Sydney many years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Because idiot here was umming and ahhing, am I going to do this character? Because I thought, well, it's a bit like Keith Barrett, in that it's a naive Welshman. Do I want to do that when I could be showing my, Polonius or something? And thank God, I said, yes, I should. And James was telling me about that scene where he's showing the camera at the wedding. And then I started to improvise that. And I said, I don't know what this is. Sepia. I don't think it's working because the pictures come out brown. But other than that, every comma, and that's the thing, the scripts are so beautifully written. And so you just do it exactly as it is.
Before we get to the Gavin and Stacey scripts, you mentioned Human Remains. We should see a clip of Human Remains.
Because Ruth was in
and
an
this
episode,
is your first on screen with Rob?
Well, it was after the pilots that we'd done for Wales.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, because you'd started working with Julia, meeting her through the improv comedy, and then I also worked with her, but we went after that onto 90 Night. But this was, I can't remember.
2000.
You'd written this script beforehand, hadn't you? And for anybody, has anybody not heard of Human Remains?
Well, they're too embarrassed to admit it.
Because there was only one series, wasn't there?
Yes, in 2000. Came out at the same time. I had a great year, after struggle. In the autumn of 2000, Marion and Jeff went out for 10 weeks. And Human Remains. So all of a sudden, well, who's this guy? Out of nowhere. And they were great shows. They, highly thought of. And I was off.
For anybody who hasn't seen it, I just think it's an exceptional piece of comedy.
I'm very proud of it,
writing,
very happy with it.
because the characterisation, and it's so natural / bizarre.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Shall we see the clip?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at this.
And of course, Mark Benton was in that as well, and we worked with him a lot since, haven't we? So,
What are your memories of appearing in that then, Ruth?
I just remember going down to Brydon, and you had this script, and I just remember sitting around and reading it, and the excitement. I just felt that everything had moved on to another level for you, and it was like you and Julia. I was just so incredibly proud of what you'd created, because I knew the process that you'd gone through from literally starting from scratch.
Oh, it was a long process. We met together. What happened was... Julia,
what happened was...
I'll tell you what happened. Julia was working with Steve Coogan, who was this hero of mine, who at that point I hadn't met, I can't turn back the clock now, but... And she was working with him, and he just set up Baby Cow Productions and had said to her, if you ever write any, because she was in his show, if you write anything, don't take it to Talkback, bring it to us. So she said to me, Julia, why don't we write something? Well, we loved Woody Allen, all about relationships all the time. So we said, okay. We got together and we sat down with maybe a laptop or a pad. I spent a day together and nothing came, nothing, just dreadful. And then we thought, well, let's do it like we've done in the improv. So the next day I brought my video camcorder in those days, and we sat down like this, and we just, no idea what we're going to say. We just said, how long has your sister been with us now? Oh, it's been about 7 years. But she doesn't make a fuss. Well, that's the beauty of a coma. And then it just grows like that. But as Ruth said, very, very long. So when we got to the stage when we were in Brighton, we filmed it over a glorious summer in Brighton. That was the culmination of a lot of hard work.
And in both your writing, how important is that editing? I mean, you said you recorded a lot of your improvisation.
But you mustn't, I mean, I'm not being falsely modest. She's a writer.
Sure.
I'm someone who has written. I mean,
sure.
It's not the same thing. I'm not being falsely modest, but seriously, Ruth is a proper writer. I've co-written some stuff. It's not, we're not really the same. We're not the same animals.
I think that the overlap, probably with what you, and I'm not really sure quite how it works with the trip, because
that's not where Michael writes that, and then we colour it in.
But again,
we
that's
improv. That's
but you
writing.
do improv, but you use improvisation, don't you? And I would say that that's where the overlap is the improvisation, because James and I probably, what's different is that we do plan loosely what's going to happen in an episode. So we kind of work out what's going to happen right at the end of the series, in the days when we did a series, and then what happens at the end of each episode, and then we sort of work backwards from there, work out a loose sort of scene by scene, like literally we put post-it notes on, but it just goes scene in garage, and that's it. Right. And then we do improvise it, so we take on the characters.
Do you?
Ourselves, yeah. James loves being Pam.
I can imagine it. I can imagine him doing that.
Yeah, because I think she probably reminds him of maybe a lot of relatives, female relatives of his. I think that's what it is.
And how much of an influence were relatives and friends and people that you knew in writing the characters for Gavin and Stacey? I mean, did you have an Uncle Bryn type character, and did you have a friend?
No, I mean, obviously, because the setup was going to be a wedding. Well, no, I should actually, what we started off with before Gavin and Stacey became what Gavin and Stacey now is. James had been to a wedding in Barry, and it was an English groom and a Welsh bride. And he just said, it's so amazing, isn't it? You never see anything about a wedding on TV where nothing much really happens. And we started talking about, obviously, because I'm from Porthcawl, which is just down the road from Barry, and we were just talking about the Welsh character. I remember we did this whole conversation about cars and comparing characters, to cars. And I remember James was saying things like, goes, oh yeah, I mean, Kyle, he's a Lexus. He's a Lexus, definitely. And it's how you sort of class people according to their characters and cars. So what we did was talk about this wedding day, and that's all it was going to be originally. It was just going to be a 1-hour comedy drama about a wedding where the bride was Welsh and the groom was English. And we were filming Fat Friends at the time, and we were in this hotel in Leeds, and there were lots of conferences and things on, and we would just observe people and just go, oh, that woman over there, that's the drunken auntie at the wedding, and he's the geeky uncle, and probably became Uncle Bryn. And we just sort of did it that way, and we wrote a kind of treatment. The piece was called It's My Day, and we had lots of little vignettes, and that's all it was, really. It was just little bits of conversation between characters at a wedding. And we also did a sort of backstory about how these two people met. And we sent it into BBC Three, and Stuart Murphy, who was then head of BBC Three, said, we don't have a slot for a 1-hour comedy drama, but why don't you dramatise the backstory. He said, you've got the whole thing there. He said, why don't you make the wedding episode 6? So we thought, oh, blimey. And that's kind of where it went, really. So it went from being It's My Day to being Gavin and Stacey.
Wow.
And that's really where it came from. But again, it came from improvising and talking about stuff that we knew about, I suppose.
Yeah.
Characteristics. You know, you mentioned about people that we knew in our real lives. Often people will say to me, oh my God, Nessa's me, isn't she? And I have to go, no, she isn't actually. Because I think you sort of absorb things, you pick up things from people. The only true to life element of Nessa, I would say, is that when we started off, when it was just about a wedding, and we knew that I was going to play the best friend of the bride, the only characteristic we had for her was that she always got drunk and sang Wild Thing at weddings, which is something I have been known to do. But I think people like to think that they've inspired characters, because it's a compliment, I suppose.
Yeah. Can we see a clip of Nessa? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I think it's time. I think it's
so.
time. Set this up for us, Ruth. This is in the arcades in Barry.
Oh, yes, yes. So this is this is where Nessa's at work and she's on the phone, and two guys come in and start messing around in the arcade. And I'm really proud of this because Nessa she's multilingual. And in this scene, she gets to speak some Welsh. So I'm quite chuffed about this.
Okay, here we go. Very good.
It's quite a brave thing to just be able to stand there just going, oh, for ages and ages. And you have to, it is a bit of a risk, you know, because, and I think people have to have bought into the character by that stage to be able to do so. It's a bit like with Steve Coogan when he's shouting Dan, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's a similar thing, yeah.
And Steve Coogan, his production company was part of Gavin and Stacey then, was it, Ruth?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when Rob and Julia did Human Remains, I was in that one episode. By the way, I should say, because I don't think we said it, it's about 6 different couples, by the way, if you want to watch
Human Remains, yes.
Yeah, Human Remains.
Each episode is a different couple.
So I was in that one episode, and that character that I play in there really was the precursor to Linda, who is in Nighty Night, which I did with Julia. You weren't in Nighty Night, were you? No. And so anyway, that obviously I then got to work with Baby Cow. Rob knew Baby Cow, and James had been in. Oh, James was in
Cruise of the Gods.
Cruise of the Gods, which
That's
was
where
fun.
I met James.
Was it?
Yeah, and I remember, if we can take a moment to remember James. We did this thing called Cruise of the Gods. It was me, Steve. It's where I met David Walliams. It's where I met Russell Brand. It was all filmed. It was about a fan cruise. Steve and I had been stars of an 80s science fiction show. He'd gone on to America and done well. I was down on my luck, and go on this cruise with these fans. So David Walliams was the head of the fan club, and James played the son I didn't know I'd fathered all these years ago. And there he was, this young, very, very young guy, and I'm filming a scene with him in the cabin where he tells me that I'm his dad. And I distinctly remember filming this scene with a bloke I'd never heard of, and I distinctly remember looking at him during the scene and going, oh, bloody hell, I better pull my socks up. Because he just has something. Yeah. He's an incredibly talented bloke, right? And you could see it there. Yeah. The funny thing was that he was loving being with Steve, and he knew David's stuff and he knew my stuff. So he was this young.
Yeah.
Oh, he said it was amazing.
He said it was a bit like sort of being like a first former hanging out with a sixth former.
Yeah, and he used to. We were in Istanbul for a little bit, and David and I became fast friends almost instantly. And David said, right, we're going to go and look around the Grand Bazaar, come on. And off we went. And my memory said, James, wait for me. And he says that himself, he would follow us around, you know. And one night we were in a taverna, we were in Greece now, and he said to me as we were walking back to this resort, this mosquito-ridden resort, he said, what I really want to do is write. And I'd done Marion and Jeff and Human Remains, so my only advice was, do it. Stop talking about it. Get on with it and do it.
Do the hard work, the hard graft.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like that wonderful Peter Cook quote where he's at a party and he says to someone, what are you doing currently? And the person says, I'm writing a book. And Peter Cook says, oh, really? Neither am I.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's very true. But I mean, so Baby Cow made Cruise of the Gods, and so they were a company that we knew, and they were very writer-centric.
Right.
Henry Normal, who really was at the heart of it, wasn't he? He was very pro-writers, so he would look at scripts and he would always want to help the writer achieve what they were trying to achieve, rather than put his own ideas onto it. You know,
they're very brave as well. They put, and Truth Steve put his money where his mouth is, you know, because I was unknown, and they got behind Marion and Jeff and Human Remains. They did the Boosh, they did James and Ruth, they did Julia's stuff, you know, which is why they grew to become a huge company, because they had the courage of their convictions.
And it was risky stuff. Even Gavin and Stacey took so many risks, didn't it? In that it was a warm, friendly comedy. But as you say, sometimes nothing happens. Like you mentioned earlier.
I have to say, we'd already kind of got it. The BBC were already interested in it. Yeah. So we went to Baby Cow because we knew them as a company, so it kind of worked that way. So in a way, we'd kind of done the work. We were lucky enough that the BBC had already shown an interest in it. Yeah. And it's really weird because, as you say, it's not really about anything. Nothing much happens in it, really.
Yeah, you mentioned that, was it a 10-page script for ordering a curry? 10 pages,
9 pages, I think, in the,
That's incredible,
the last series with us ordering a curry. Yeah, exactly. But it then seems like, you know, going back to when we wrote the first episode, we really didn't know what this was going to be. We had no idea what it was going to be, and we had a very limited amount of time. James was on tour. I think I was doing Nighty Night, the second series. And so we had 24 hours. We had 3 lots of 8 hours where we could write. And we met in this hotel in London. And we wrote it. And when we got to the end, we thought, well, we have no idea whether this is any good. But it does, in a way, it doesn't really matter, because we have had such a brilliant time laughing at the scene with Bryn and the rape alarm that actually it's all been worth it. So, you know, we just read it over and over again because we just loved it so much.
Yeah. We have that clip.
Oh, please, let's watch it.
Let's have a look at this.
I love watching this clip. The thing is, I mean, it is, you forget the darkness of it sometimes as well. Yeah. But also, Rob and I were talking about how our voices have, have changed.
Bryn is different there. I mean, that's the first episode.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of playing them, and I'm not sounding my H's in some of it. So it's developed since then.
Were you finding Bryn's voice?
Well, I thought I'd found it, but then as you do more of it, no, seriously, I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I didn't realise till the second series how good a character he was, really. And I worked harder on the second series. Because I was doing, I thought, right, I'm a supporting character. I remember talking to Chris Gernon, our director, about this. And then I thought, wow, no, this is great. And I looked for more moments in the second series. That I can tell. I'm trying to be very, very relaxed. But the voice is quite different. I was quite surprised, actually.
But I think Nessa's voice is as well.
You were a little bit as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I know I've been more conscious, especially with the special now, to really pay attention to the Barry sort of accent. Yeah.
Did it went from being, it could have remained a cult classic, is what I'm trying to say, but
Yes.
it became a big mainstream hit. Went to BBC One. We all became obsessed with it. Did that change your writing for the second series then, Ruth? Did that?
No, I think, you know, what we set out to do with the first series was, like I said, going back to that original document, it was about a wedding. So when we got to the end of that first series, we didn't really know. I mean, I think the BBC wanted a second series whilst it was still going out, the first series. They were really pleased with it, which was lovely. But we weren't really sure where to go. And I think the idea of ending the first series with Nessa being pregnant, we'd sort of, that had come quite late in the process. So it obviously did leave room for more. But because we had these two people who were living in two different towns, 200 miles apart, they're now married. So what do you do with them now? Because you no longer have distance as a character, really. It was a character in the first series. But we've also got these other two characters, Nessa and Smithy, who've been kind of sort of having a kind of weird relationship. So there was room to go somewhere with it, but we still weren't really sure what to do. And I think the baby gave us the impetus to move forward. So, you know, that first episode of the second series where they all go for this meal in Essex. And of course we've got the idea of Stacey living in Essex and a fish out of water. We've got that running as well. And then just having them all in the restaurant going, one after the other, going, Nessa's pregnant and you're the father. You know, all of that building and building and building. It was lovely. It was one of my favourite episodes,
Great
actually.
episode,
That,
yeah. It really is very strong.
I wanted to ask you as well about the Welsh accent throughout Gavin and Stacey, and you tell me that you were really specific. You had a map, as it were, for every character about how Stacey is not actually from Barry.
Well, yeah. Now, here's the thing. When we auditioned, we wanted, obviously, to have everybody be from Barry, or to have a Barry accent. But it just seemed, you know, Joanna Page was definitely, she was just so Stacey. She was born to play that part, right? Joanna's a Swansea girl. And I do remember having a conversation with her once, I think early on, where I just said, do you want to try a sort of Cardiff, Barry accent? But it changed her demeanour completely. And she sort of started talking like that and going a bit like deep. But, you know, it just took away the shine, really, from her. So, so I said, oh, look, just keep it Swansea. And then Mel, who plays her mum, is also from Swansea. So that made sense. And then you're kind of that way originally, aren't you? So from... No, but you're like...
I hardly think this is the time or place.
You're from, like, Port Talbot way, aren't you?
Talbot, I'm from, see?
Yeah.
So it just makes sense. So with this, in the story, because everybody sometimes you get people say, well, why doesn't Stacey speak with a Barry accent? And the reason is because they moved Trevor,
my brother, God rest his soul. They moved, you see, when we lost Trevor.
Yeah.
And they came to Barry.
Yeah. So that was it. So that was the reason behind it.
Yeah, what a backstory. But I don't think we'd heard as much of a Welsh accent until Gavin and Stacey arrived. I'm talking about like proper in the mainstream.
Yeah, that's very true. I have always said that it's what I love about it is that it's put Wales, they're not on the map. That's a dreadful phrase, but it's really put it in the culture, you know. I love that, and I think I've said before that it's a Wales that I recognise. Because that's what I loved about the script. Because Ruth and I find similar things about Wales funny. We'll often talk on the phone and about things we've heard people say. And this, Gavin and Stacey, really puts that out there. It really chimes with me.
Was that intentional, Ruth? I mean, obviously it's set in Barry and set in Essex. You had to have Welsh accents in there. But you bring the language in and you bring little bits that you've picked up in your working life as well in there.
I think we wanted to have an affection, show a real affection for Wales and the richness of Yeah, I've said it. I mean, I've said this about Stella, the series of Stella, that the characters in there, they're just so extreme. But it's something I love about being Welsh, is that extremity. And that is like... Yes, no! And, you know, those little nuances of excitement that we have as Welsh people.
Good God, yes.
But, you know, and this thing's like, well, tell you what came on to me now the other day. Yeah, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes I suppose Welshness has been portrayed historically on TV. You'll have the odd one Welsh character here and there, and they always have that very sing-song voice and going up and down like that, and they tend to be a little bit two-dimensional. So it was nice to see another side, but without going like really, really dark either. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, you played a character in Little Britain as well, didn't you?
Yeah, she was something else. Myfanwy. Well, Myfanwy was probably quite sing-song, actually. But what was lovely about Myfanwy was that she embraced the positivity that you can find, I think, in Wales. That you know, where people are really, they want you to do well, and they're really like excited. Well, that's lovely, isn't it? You know what I mean? And so she was very big-hearted, Myfanwy, and completely at ease in her sexuality, and had this customer, David, who was not at ease and probably wasn't even gay, but was trying to find his way somehow. So, yeah, the positivity is lovely. And I think there's a lot of that in Gavin Stacey, actually. I think the Welsh characters are very positive, but actually so are the Essex characters, aren't they? But it's in a different way.
I love in the very first episode, or maybe the second episode, when they're talking about going up to the party in London, and Bryn says, "Gwen, have you ever heard such nonsense? A party in London with people I've never met?" And then you cut to Alison going, "Oh my Christ!"
Yeah, we're going to have a party. We're going to have a party, and he invites them all down, and then Bryn is really happy to go, isn't he?
Well, yeah, because he goes to these things and then finds he has a great time.
Yeah. Well, we do in that episode when the Welsh contingent go to Essex. I think that does show where you meet the sort of the two clashes of the two culture clashes. Because of course, don't forget the families in Gavin and Stacey are non-Welsh speaking Welsh people, which is so that again that lays itself open, I suppose, isn't it? When Mick says about the road signs, what's all that about with the road signs? You know, you've got them in English but you don't speak the language, and then you've got that whole thing about I only know one man in Barry who speaks Welsh.
Oh yes. And there's that
Dick
bit
Powell.
where Dick Powell, comes around with the meat. And then there's that time with the barbecue episode when Dick is going, and Bryn is there with Larry going, something about a sausage, I think. And Larry says, is this all fallen off the back of a lorry, Bryn? He goes, no, lorry, it's stolen.
Yeah.
It's amazing how little people outside of Wales realise what's happening in Wales in terms of the language, in terms of people not speaking it, but in terms of people learning it as well. But I think Gavin and Stacey spread a lot of positivity about Wales, didn't it?
I think so, I really do, I really think it did,
And in terms of Welsh comedy, maybe Rob, you can tell us how you think it's changed since you started. I mean, has it, would you say it's come on in leaps and bounds?
Well, I don't live here anymore.
No,
I don't know.
But you can.
But seriously, I mean, the big change for me, and this is just Cardiff, is now Hollywood in the West. I mean, the amount of production that's going on here is ludicrous. I keep driving past buildings. Oh yes, his Dark Materials was there, and this was here. I mean, it wasn't like this back in my day, where there was BBC Wales or there was HTV. And if those two places didn't want you, you were...
Yeah. You know. But Ruth, you do live here, and how you were part of Writersroom, I believe. Were you right at the very start of your career?
Oh, well, because this Writersroom is part of tonight's.
Yeah.
I know again, dates are rubbish with me, but there was a competition that was set up by the Writersroom, and it was in conjunction with a series called Baby Father. I think it must have been around 2000 or something like that. And I just started to think about writing. I think I'd tried writing a script about a compulsive overeater in the valleys who was conned by a fake pen friend. Great plot. I was just trying to, find my way. And there was this competition to write a short story. And it was just something that you were inspired by in Baby Father. And I wrote about, and it had to be 2,000 words, and I wrote about a woman waiting for the result of a pregnancy test. And it was called Blue Line in the Box. And it was, she was waiting and she was having all these thoughts and doubts about her relationship. And she wasn't sure she was doing the right thing and what was she going to do, about having this baby. And you could tell that she didn't want to be pregnant, but then she found out she wasn't pregnant and she was disappointed. So it was a very sort of simple thing, but it really gave me confidence. And I think any schemes that encourage people to write and be creative. I mean, that's our sort of life force, really, being creative and connecting with other people and communicating with other people. Whether it's, a paragraph about something or a short poem or a little exchange of dialogue, anything like that, I just think is so enriching and good for our soul. I really do think it is good for our collective soul anyway, to keep going. So competitions like that particular competition was very important for me.
Yeah. And we have to ask about the Christmas special. But first, we need to watch the Gavin and Stacey trailer for the Christmas special, which I hope you have all seen already. If not, let's all enjoy this.
Here's a little bit of trivia for you. The lights on Barry, on those pillars, that night, for some reason, there'd been a communication breakdown and the council turned the lights off. So those pillars were in the dark, and we had a wonderful person in post-production at Gorilla, I think it was, down the bay, who made the lights work.
CGI.
Yeah, wow. It was added on afterwards, so there we are. Bear that in mind next time you watch it, all right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we could just dissect the
could.
trailer. I mean, there's so many bits there, isn't there? We've seen an extended piece with you, Rob, as well, where Christmas dinner just isn't going to plan.
Yeah, that was the last scene I shot, remember?
Oh, I know. I do remember. I was crying.
Yeah.
I did. It was emotional, wasn't
Oh,
it?
the whole job was joyous, because here was, for lots of reasons. I mean, my background with Ruth, so number one. Then you've got a group of people that you haven't seen as a group for about 9 years, is it, something like that? Coming together on a thing that you enjoyed at the time that has grown since in people's affection and become this big thing that you get asked about almost every day. And here you're doing something that you didn't think you'd be doing. I didn't think there'd be a Christmas special. And we're there, and it's a brilliant script, and you're just delighted to be doing it. It's sunny. I mean, it's too hot. It was bloody boiling. But I was wearing polyester, nothing but polyester. So I think everybody was often quite emotional. We laughed so much. And then now I've seen it, and it's rather good. So it was the happiest job I've ever done.
Wow.
And it was
early this year. It was James who announced, wasn't it, Ruth, that this was happening, I think, on Twitter.
Yes, he did. No, the reason I was hesitating was because I thought, I've talked about this, but we were doing an interview, weren't we? You see, the thing is as well, right, we were talking about Baby Cow. So since in this last 10 years, James and I have gone on to other things. Obviously, James has gone up there and stratospheric, and we both now have our own production company. So his is Fullwell 73, and mine is Tidy Productions, which made Stella. And so we've been used to working in Wales as a production company, and we realised that now we were in different places, actually. So to go back to Baby Cow, although we could have done that, I suppose, and handed it over and gone back to how we made it 10 years ago. Things have changed, things have moved on, and so it was the natural thing was for us to do a co-production. So it's a tidy and full-well co-production. But what that brought with it was a lot more responsibility. So whereas before, when we made it before, we just sort of let Baby Cow get on with it. Now, James and I were responsible for, you know, getting a casting director, getting a crew, and all of those things that come along with it. So it was from my personal experience, it was much different. You know, it was a much more different, is that bad English? Probably. It was a very different experience from 10 years ago. However, it felt very wholesome in the sense that we were involved with every step of the way. So when we actually reached the point where we were able to announce it, it was such a huge relief because there'd been such a big journey to get to that point. You know,
when did you start discussing it? When did you and James think we can do a Christmas special?
Probably 2 years ago. But then finding the time was difficult. And so we had to literally say, look, we have to look at our diaries and find a time when we can get together. And it just seemed the only way we could do it is if I went out to LA. So I went out in September of last year for 5 days. We didn't tell anybody. We didn't tell anybody apart from our partners.
Didn't know.
Nobody,
not a clue,
nobody
nothing.
knew. Right. Because we couldn't risk it. We
known
couldn't,
us since we were at school together. Nothing.
we couldn't risk it in case it failed.
Yeah.
So we planned it in that September weekend, and then we went back out there in February and had a week. By the end of that week, we'd sort of... It wasn't easy that week because we were, you know, bear in mind, we hadn't written it for years and years. We'd had ideas for the characters and lines of dialogue had gone back and forth, but we hadn't sat down and written a script. You know, we weren't match fit anymore, where we'd written series after series, you know, 3 series in a row. And, you know, James and I hadn't spent that much time together for years. We'd seen each other over the years. We'd spoken together, but we hadn't sat down in a room together and written for a long time. So, you know, there was a lot at stake, and we got to halfway through the week and we were going, oh God, we'd written something ridiculous, like about 46 pages, which for the writers out there, you'll know that a half hour is about 35, and we hadn't even hardly got to the end of the first part of the story. So there was a lot of rewriting, reshuffling, discussing, and we got one night, we thought we're going to just give up because it just didn't seem to be, I don't know, there was something missing and we couldn't pinpoint it. We had dinner with our partners and we got talking, something sparked something off that led from one thing to another, and I don't know how it happened, but this often used to happen with me and James. Out of the blue, we'd just get this idea, and I think that was the heart of this Christmas special. So when you see it, I can't tell you now, but obviously, if we'd seen it, I could say to you, oh, it was that bit there. That's the heart of the show. So, yeah, that's kind of...
We can't wait to see it. And we'll know now as well. Will we know? Will there be a moment?
Well, I don't know if it's a moment as such. It's to do with... I can't say.
Oh.
I don't want to spoil it.
No.
Which bit is it? Oh.
We'll all
Very
be
much
watching
so,
it.
yes.
Will you be watching it on Christmas Day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with the family?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
I definitely will be watching it.
It's a nice thing to watch because it's an ensemble piece. Because, you know, often with things that you've done, you don't really want to watch them too much because all you'll see is what you do wrong. But in Gavin and Stacey, it's such an ensemble, and it's so good that, yeah, we when we're flicking around at home, if it comes across, we'll often stay with it and watch it. Yeah.
It's always on.
It is always on.
It's always on, and it's brilliant because you see bits that you don't remember.
That's right.
Yeah,
bits you haven't
that is
seen.
the joy of it.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
You were asking about when it was announced.
Oh, yeah.
We had to keep it so quiet, so we didn't tell anybody. And then James thought we should have as a backup this picture of the script, the front cover of the script, just in case somebody leaked it to the press. And every day that went by, from the minute that James phoned Charlotte Moore at BBC One and said, this is what we'd like to do you want it? And she went, yes. There was always a risk that somebody was going to find out. And so we had to try really, really hard. I mean, I even wrote a fake story line about the episode. And do you know what? It got reprinted somewhere the other day. Yeah. Somebody was like giving away spoilers. Right. And I was like, no, that doesn't happen. And I remembered. So basically we had to keep it as quiet as possible. We had this backup that if it leaked anywhere, James would put it out on his Twitter account, because I'm not on social media. We had it ready to go, and we made it. We got to May the 28th, which is when it was announced, and nobody found out. And I'd even gone on Radio 2 in the day before, on the Bank Holiday Monday, with Matt Lucas, the lovely Matt Lucas, who was interviewing me, and said at the end, so is there going to be any more Gavin and Stacey? And I went, oh, no, because, James is in America, and I'm in Cardiff. And I felt awful for lying to him. I had to email him. Once the news was out, I had to email him and say, I'm so sorry for lying to you. And he said, no, I totally understand. But that morning, we announced it, and we had told the cast, didn't we? Because we had a WhatsApp group. Because you should say about about you and Alison.
We had this WhatsApp group that we were all chatting about it on, and it was still secret. And I went to the BAFTAs, and I was going down the aisle, and there was Alison. I said, hey, how are you doing? And she said, oh, yeah. She said, I'm nervous about G&S. No, she said, I'm nervous about Gilbert and Sullivan, right? and I went, yeah. And I thought she must be in a thing about Gilbert and Sullivan, and she's nominated tonight for that. And I might even have said, and terrible if I don't, I might even have said, but you're so good in it.
Oh, bless you. That's lovely, isn't it?
And then we went to our seats, and I sat down, and we sat in the way, and I went, oh! And I went back up to her, and I said, what you
And then we set up a group, didn't we, called Gilbert and Sullivan?
That's right, yeah.
Because just in case anybody sort of tapped into it. But the next morning, when it was finally, we agreed everybody's deals, and we were ready to go. Morning of 28th of May, I think it was at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. And James just went, right, I'm going to do it now. Okay. And then it was just astonishing. Absolutely, getting texts coming in from, really close friends of mine and relatives, like, my sister going, what, is it true? Yeah, because we had kept it quiet. So I was really chuffed, because I think, more than anything, with this Gavin and Stacey special, there's been such affection for this show that it really does make me feel quite emotional that people love it so much. And time and time again, people will say lovely things about it. And I love the fact, I get people say, oh, it really got me through a bad time in my life. Or, people go through a divorce or a bereavement or just a really sad time in their life. And they go, I watched Gavin and Stacey over and over again, and I just loved it. That is, to think that, a TV show can have brought a bit of joy to somebody is wonderful. Yeah. So for us to be able to be in a position to come back to it and to bring a lovely, juicy, festive Christmas special of Gavin and Stacey, James and I are beyond chuffed, I can't tell you, that it has worked out. And, maybe there'll be people that'll go, nah, not as good as it. I think most people will enjoy it, because it's just a lovely, big, lovely Christmas present from us to you.
Oh. I think we need it this year more than ever as well.
Yes.
We have time for questions before our time is up, so don't be shy. Right, we've got a microphone in each bit, I believe. So let's start here, and then we'll go to the middle. Who had your hand up? Yeah. Don't be, here we go.
Thank you. Hello, thank you for bringing this to us. With the greatest of apologies to Ruth, this is a question for Rob.
How dare you?
I do apologise,
Where are you?
I'm over here. Hello.
Right.
Hello. disembodied voice. I can't do the small man in a box, sorry. I was just wondering, Rob, if you might be able to convince Mr. Coogan to follow up your trips to the north of England and Italy and Spain with a trip to Wales, perhaps.
Well, I mean, he's not an easily persuaded man. I mean,
But you're a persuasive character.
he knows his own mind. We have done another one. We've done one in Greece that comes out next spring. And that may be the last one. I mean, there's only so many times you can say, "No, he talks like this."
I think you should finish off in Wales, personally, but there you go.
Won't be the first time.
Thanks for your question. Right, in the middle, at the back. Do you want to go? Yeah.
Hi, I'm a teacher, and it was really lovely to hear what an inspiration being at school and taking part in school productions was. Is there any nugget of being in school that you really remember, or wisdom from your amazing drama teacher, or any other teachers that has really stuck with you?
Well, with Roger, it was just the whole thing. He took it very seriously, made you feel, gave you responsibility, made you feel very mature, gave you confidence, and guided you very sensitively. And that's because I am asked that quite a lot, and that's my answer. Is there isn't one thing where I could say, I do remember that there was only one time when Roger was cross with me because I was talking in a group when I should have been listening. And I was crushed that I didn't mind, the other teachers, they could whatever, but that he was disappointed in me meant a lot to me, which I think says how he was affecting me, and being a sort of role model and a guide, as it were.
I think it's wonderful if you have just at least one teacher that believes in you. I think I get so worried about young people today and
Which ones?
kids. Oh, just two of them actually. Right. Yeah. My sister's got teenage kids, and I think the pressure is so huge. So any bit of encouragement and from somebody that you look up to, like a teacher. Like you said, that's important to you, isn't it? That feeling of their approval. But it doesn't have to necessarily be a teacher. It can be somebody who works in the canteen in school, or you know what I mean? But it's just having somebody believe in you. Funny enough, I found, I was looking through lots of old memorabilia, and I found a card that Roger had sent to me when I did My Fair Lady, which was my last school show. And I was reading it literally like a couple of days ago, and it said, at the end of it, it just said, go on now and grasp your future with both hands. And I think sometimes you just need somebody to go on, it's all right, go for it, to just, to give you that bit of confidence. Because it's so easy to, when you're young, I look back and I think, oh God, I could have, a bit of confidence does everybody in the world a good, I think.
And
having
Rob,
somebody believe in you.
Am I right in saying as well that Roger also still nurtures talent and still...
Oh yeah, well it's my shout. Yeah. It does incredible stuff with young filmmakers all around Wales. It's fantastic. Yeah. He was incredibly, he's still very young, but he was incredibly young. I didn't realise it, of course, back at the time, because everybody seems older, but I realise now he was... I think it's important when for kids, any kid, to have one thing that they think they're good at. It doesn't matter what, maybe they play the guitar, maybe they're good at keepy-uppies, something. So you can be, you're the one, you're that. So for me, it was performing and being funny, or, voices, whatever it was. I had a thing. And I kind of feel sorry for some kids that don't have that. You've got to find whatever it is. And it might just be being caring, it might be being helpful, or maybe you're a good arsonist. I mean, if you are well, please don't be quick to judge. I mean, if you are going to set fire to school buildings, then really get them going. Be the best arsonist.
Let's get some more questions in now.
Quick.
Over here. There you go.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Just a craft question. At the end of the 5th episode in season 1, Gavin and Stacey on The Bachelor and Bachelorette night have a huge fight and a fallout. But then in the 6th episode, you pick up and they don't, there's no immediate dealing with the fight. So many shows would have probably started with them dealing with that fight, but you didn't. Was there a big discussion about that, or was that instinctual?
Well, we had to, the 6th episode had to be the wedding. So, but of course, what we always had at the beginning of each episode was the pre-credits phone call, which is funny when you look back. You think now, you know, that became a characteristic of each episode. We didn't necessarily start off intending that to be the case. But what was lucky about that, the pre-credits phone call in the episode 6 was that we could just tell what the reaction was after the fight of episode 5 by just seeing 2 empty chairs. So you didn't know whether Gavin and Stacey had made up and whether they were going to actually get married. But in the true sort of Gavin and Stacey style, where nothing much really happens, you know, they just deal with it in a line of dialogue, going, oh, yeah, they're all right now. We didn't think he was going to turn up. Oh, yeah, no, it is. It's all fine now. You know, but you're absolutely right. We could have made a different choice, I suppose. If we'd had a 7th episode, maybe we would have made an episode about them making up.
We have time for more questions. Down the front here.
Hiya. So both your guys' careers and shows have been hugely inspiring for Welsh writers and actors. My question is, as an actor-writer, how did you go about pitching not just your shows, but also you in the shows? Did that make a difference in the pitches?
Sorry, what do you mean?
So you're also in the shows that you wrote.
Yeah.
Did that make a difference in the pitches when you were sort of selling the show, than that you would be in them as well?
It's a really interesting question, actually, because I suppose in a funny sort of way, we just assumed that we would be cast in the, you know, as Smithy and Nessa. We just assumed it. But having now, since then, you know, having Tidy Productions and seen how things work with commissions and stuff, when somebody, often a writer-performer, sends something in, you have to say, well, you have to know that you may not be cast in this. You may have written this for yourself, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the broadcaster, you know, the broadcaster might want Jennifer Aniston to play that part, you know. And then, of course, you're left with the dilemma of going, oh, well, I've written this character in this episode, and I just assumed I would play it. But they don't want me, but they do want Jennifer Aniston, so I have to weigh up and go, oh, well, I'd rather my writing was made, rather it was made into a programme than not at all. But that is a difficult...
Well, that reminds me of the Stallone story, of course, with Rocky, because when he wrote Rocky, they offered him a fair bit of money, they didn't want him playing it, and he hung on and hung on and hung on and did it when it must have been very tempting to say, great, I'll take the money, you know, have the script and my writing will be out there. You know, I think you've got to be bold, you've got to be confident, you've got to, you know, you can't be too, oh, yeah.
But then I think...
You've got to try and lead.
I do think it's different these days in the sense that something like, say, BBC Three, which is where Gavin and Stacey started off, I don't know, I don't think it's so star-led now, is it? You basically, broadcasters want talent, and if the talent is there, the talent is there. So I'm sort of contradicting what I've just said, I suppose, in many ways. But,
just got to be, I think you've just got to be desirable. It's you know, in the truest sense, you've got to, these people are only human, these people that have the power to commission stuff, and they want hits, because it makes their life better. If they don't choose some hits, they're not going to be around. So they have needs as well. You've got to somehow get yourself in that position where you are going to improve their life. As opposed to being, well, could it be, you know, he's got to kind of try. It took me a long time to realise that. And when we did Marion and Jeff, suddenly the people sort of wanted it. And it was a strange adjustment to make, because I'd been knocking on doors for years, telling people that I thought I was good. And you must show them. Don't tell them. show them. And nowadays, it's easier than ever because
Oh,
you
yeah.
can shoot a bloody masterpiece on your phone.
Yeah.
So you can do that now. When I shot the kind of pilot teaser thing for Marion and Jeff, it was on a camcorder. I had to rent an edit suite. I then had to rent a dub separately. I had to go to a printer's to print up the VHS box. I mean, I could do all that on my phone probably now, you know. So you've got to have something that somebody wants, and remember, human nature is such that, you know, it's like you sort of turning the tables, or just remembering you do have both. If you've got something good, well then be proud of it and make them want it.
Excellent advice. Thank you for your question. Few more, I think. So do you want to go and then in the front? Yeah, lovely.
Hello. Do you have like a sort of method of writing? Like, do you have a way of starting or a method that you go back to in order to get the pace back again? Or is it all kind of improvised?
Well,
Do you have hours? Do you write during specific hours?
I'm terrible.
Really?
Well, yeah. I write when I can. I mean, I've recently been writing prose fiction, so which is much more solitary process. But again, you can sort of do it anywhere. So I was writing till 1 a.m. today, for example, on the novel. Yeah. So I think it depends. If you're writing with somebody, then you've got to have set hours. James and I sort of had set hours when we were writing together. But no, I'm not terribly organised. But I think that's not a good thing. I think it's good to be
But
organised.
do you have like a sort of wavelength that you go to in order to get stories or to get
Well,
like,
I think
inspiration for things?
I
like
would say that
storylines?
I'm more of a character-led writer. I'm not amazing on plot, and that goes for a lot of stuff that I've written. So I always go back to the character, and hopefully the story will come from the character. And that's what you did when you were improvising, I suppose, wasn't it?
Yeah, as I say, the plots for our stuff came purely from improvisation, as I recall it. But then when we wrote Human Remains, they were self-contained stories. We weren't doing what you've done. It was a little bit when Hugo and I did Marion and Jeff. That was a story. But I was creating a lot of, you know, I would just speak as Keith and da. And then we thought, oh, maybe that could happen, this could happen, that could happen. But it was Hugo who would take it away, and you know.
Thank you.
Thank you. And final question in the front here.
Hi, I was just wondering, it's kind of contradictory to what's just been said, but if there are any events that have like happened in either of your lives that you've been put on screen. So like you talked about the characters, not necessarily like they've been in your life, but I was just wondering like scenario-wise.
You mean like how real-life experiences have... Yeah, I would say not maybe huge experiences, but little things. Like, for example, in Stella, we had a horse in the house. Stella's neighbour had a horse in the house. And some people say to me, that was a bit far-fetched. I said, well, no, it wasn't really, because a friend of mine is a GP who was doing a house call up in the valleys, and there was a horse in the house. And how brilliant is that, you know? So little things like that. And also, you have to be a bit of a magpie, I think, as well, when you sort of steal or listen and overhear conversations. One of the best lines I ever heard, which did go into an episode of Stella, was in a supermarket, and there was this couple, and they were probably in their sort of 60s, 70s, and and they were obviously bickering with each other about the frozen foods. And the woman turned to the fella and she went, "Oh, look at you, you've got a face like a ripped dap." And I thought, what a brilliant expression, you know. So certainly, there are things that sort of do go in the bank, because I think that they have to an extent, you know.
Cheers, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for your questions. I don't think we have time for more, unfortunately, but I thought we would finish.
Yes,
yeah?
I was going to say.
Shall we? Okay,
yeah.
good. Let's not say anything. We can ask a few questions after we've seen this. This, for the person pressing play, is the last one on the piece of paper, please.
Oh, yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the...
This is good.
Do you know the one?
It's so weird to think that that started from the barn dance episode where Bryn and Nessa were going to sing, and we only sang a few bars of it, really, didn't we?
We didn't have much.
And that went into us doing the whole comic relief thing. And that experience, we were just talking about it earlier, was one of the best ever experiences.
Went to Las Vegas to make the video, and it was just... Oh, we couldn't believe it, could we?
Because we did, there was at one point where we were filming the video and then Tom Jones had to walk through the crowd, didn't he?
Yeah.
And the first time that he did it, we were singing and then he walked towards us and we just looked at each other, we really filled up because it was like, and I think we've often had this, we go, we went to Porthcawl Comp, we did. Look at us now.
It was amazing, just amazing, fantastic.
I think that's a good place for us to say thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for all your writing and your acting and your comedy. It's brightened up all our lives. And thank you for being here this evening. We cannot wait for the Christmas special. Ruth Jones and Rob Brydon, everybody.